Some of you watching were right there with me when I developed this writing list or this reading list. Today I'm going to talk about books and the books that they warned us about. So some of you were there in Ann Moore's AP English class with me in 1984 when we read 1984. It's funny how those books you ignored as a teenager start making a whole lot of sense the older you get. We're going to talk about Orwell, A Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, social media, algorithms, outrage culture, and why critical thinking matters more now than ever. Not politics, not left and right, just an honest conversation about human nature, technology, and the world that we're living in. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. I'm using the actual social media right now that I'm talking about. So, folks, settle in for a minute. This isn't going to be real political. It's not going to be political at all. It's apolitical. It doesn't matter what party's in power. It's more of a reflection, something that hit me recently, and honestly, it hit me harder than I expected it to. I realized that not long ago I read 1984 in the actual year 1984, and now it's 2026. Think about that for a minute. Back when I was a kid in AP English, trying to survive homework and assignments, like most teenagers, I wasn't sitting there thinking, wow, this book contains warnings about the future and civilization. No, I was thinking how many chapters I got to read tonight and how many have I got to read before Friday. I even threatened to rip the pages out of the book. I had to buy the book to read it. I even threatened to rip the pages out as I read them because I was being forced to read the book. I went back and read it recently of my own accord, and it spoke to me when I was 15 in English class, and it spoke to me again. So we highlighted passages, we wrote essays, we talked about symbolism, we took tests, and we moved on to the next assignment. At the time, those books felt old, dusty, dramatic, and exaggerated. There was no possible way that stuff was going to happen. It was books written by nervous people imagining impossible futures. But the funny thing about life is the older that you get, you suddenly start realizing those writers weren't really trying to predict technology. They were trying to warn us about human nature, and that's different because technology changes fast. Humans really don't. But think about the world that's projected in the book 1984. There's no smartphones, there's no social media, there's no internet, there's no AI. There's no algorithms deciding what information you get to see. And yes, if you get to see this video that I'm making right now, it's because an algorithm decided you wanted to see it. There's no devices sitting in your house listening all the time. Back then, privacy was still considered normal. Today, people voluntarily carry around a tracking device in their pocket. Here's mine right here. I was looking for it. They carry around a tracking device in their pocket. Mine happens to be of the Apple persuasion, but yours might be a different brand. It doesn't matter. We document our own lives constantly, where we are, what we eat, what we think, who we vote for, who we argue with, what we buy and what we watch. When you click on that streaming box on your TV, it takes note of what you're watching. If you're using a streaming service, a lot of times they're tied in with your cell phone. So whatever you search for on the internet on your phone, you get ads for it on your TV. It's directed marketing. And we freely hand over our information to corporations we've never met before. Now listen carefully because this matters. That does not mean that we live in George Orwell's world. I'm not saying that. Our world's different than the one Orwell wrote about. Not much, but it's different. I am saying that Orwell asked questions, and it turned out to matter more than we realize. He was not alone. I think in some of those books we had to read in school, like Fahrenheit 451, that book warned about a society so distracted by entertainment that people stopped caring about knowledge. Does that sound familiar today? You can put out a good documentary on social media, and a few people will watch it. But if you throw out an entertaining reel about 30 seconds long, maybe some girls walking around in bikinis, you don't even have to say anything intelligent in it. It'll get 1 million views. People care more about entertainment than they do about knowledge. Honestly, looking around for about 5 minutes online, I can tell you that warning doesn't feel relevant today because it's not a warning, it's happening. Everything has become so fast, short, and instant. 30-second opinions, 10-second outrage clips, headlines that people never actually read the post. I've experimented on this myself. I've purposely made headlines that had nothing at all to do with the post, just to watch the comments and see what people said. It was amazing to me how that everyone was an expert on what was in the post that had never read the post. It was very clear. Then there's A Brave New World, the one that warned about comfort becoming a form of control. And that's interesting because people always imagine oppression looking brutal and obvious. It's not. Sometimes people surrender freedom willingly in exchange for convenience. And that's a much scarier idea if you really think about it. Would you give up your air conditioner in summer in North Carolina? I mean, it's only about 103 degrees in July. Would you really be willing to give up your air conditioner? I know what it's like to live outdoors or live in a tent in such brutal conditions. I've done it. It's miserable. Um, but would you really be willing to do it? My military service was one of the greatest times of my life that I actually hated and loved at the same time. But let me get back to my books. Animal Farm. Now, Animal Farm's got a movie out right now. It's a sort of a kids movie, but it's got an adult meaning into it. And there's a major adaptation coming out. It's in the theaters now. I'm generally curious to see how the modern Hollywood handles that story. I've seen the previews, they're pretty good. But Animal Farm was never just about communism. It was about power. It was about revolutions becoming the thing they claimed to fight against. It was about slogans replacing the truth. And honestly, every political movement in history should probably read that book once a year. It should be mandatory reading. Because all animals are equal in Animal Farm, but some animals are more equal than others. If you haven't read the book, read the book. Don't just rely on the movie. And you got Lord of the Flies. That book understood something uncomfortable about human beings. Civilization is way thinner than we'd like to admit. People like to imagine society is held together by laws and systems, but really it's held together by self-control. It's held together by respect, responsibility, and shared values. And when we fear and chaos take over, tribal behavior shows up real fast. Think about the medical incident that we had just a couple of years ago when simple things like toilet paper disappeared. People people acted different. We'll just leave it at that. But today online, we have it every day. We have digital tribes. People screaming at strangers through their phones and through their computers and laptops. They have no idea what they're talking about. They've read the headline, they know everything about it, and they've picked their team and they're rooting on their team. The algorithms reward anger because anger creates engagement, and engagement creates money. The social media companies pay a pittance to the creators so that they will create the content, and then their algorithm shows the content to the audience that will most likely dislike it and complain about it. And that creates engagement, that creates outrage, and that creates money. Nothing like getting everybody to argue with each other so that more people can see your commercial. Fear has become profitable and attention has become currency. So I see these videos all the time where people take their camera and just go out and stand on the sidewalk and record. I'd never heard of such things until they actually recorded me one day. And I didn't react the way a lot of these people react in these videos. I was merely curious about, hey, what are you guys doing, more than being angry about it. But you should watch some of these videos. They're called First Amendment audits. You should just go check one out. You may think the person filming's an idiot, and you may think they're a hero. Again, we're going to go back to that digital tribe. But just think about it. You're on camera from the time you leave your house, and some would say you're on camera in your house. But you're on camera constantly. You drive past people's doorbell cameras. The banks have got cameras up. Every place you go into, Walmart's filled with cameras. You go in City Hall, cameras everywhere. Does that sound kind of like 1984? If you read the book, it does. Got me a nice little camera here in my graphic that's pointed right at me. But somewhere along the line, a lot of people stopped asking whether they were being informed or simply manipulated. And that's the dangerous part. When you base your opinions on a soundbite, that's a big problem. That's a big problem for a lot of people. So, hey guys, throw me some likes in there. I can't really follow along and do this video at the same time. I'm recording it live, but I'm not really doing a live, I guess. So thanks for being in the comments. I'll look at them later. I might do a question and answer after I get done. But anyway, we're a soundbite society. We listen to the soundbite, we read the headline, and we're experts on everything. And that's the dangerous part. Not government, not corporations alone. Ordinary people slowly becoming comfortable with surrendering responsibility for critical thinking. ChatGTP and similar products are being used so much now that the teachers are having to check for it in writing assignments and homework for the kids that are taking school classes. So if you don't do the work yourself, how do you know? How'd you learn anything? Believe me, I understand. I was a lady student. I despise writing, and now I do it for a hobby. But there's a common thread in almost every dystopian story ever written. The systems matter, but human behavior matters more. And honestly, growing up in Eastern North Carolina taught me a very different mindset. Where I come from, people believed in handling problems face to face, helping neighbors when times got hard, and minding your own business unless somebody needed help. We believed in thinking for yourself, and folks did disagree sometimes loudly, but they usually treated each other like human beings afterwards. Now, people live online. They argue with people they've never met, never will meet. And social media rewards the performance more than wisdom. The loudest voice wins, the angriest clip spreads fastest, and the nuance dies almost immediately. But you know what worries me most? That AI I was just talking about. It doesn't really bother me. Technology doesn't really bother me. Politics don't bother me at all. All politicians are equally valuable and equally worthless. We need to learn this as a society. It's the speed in which everything happens. That's what worries me. Human wisdom was never designed to process this much information this fast. And let's be honest, there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. People today absorb more information in a single afternoon than earlier generations might have seen in weeks. Our ability to report the news is so much faster. If you ask the average person, they would say that violence is way up. But when you look at FBI statistics, violence is actually down. But why do people have the perception that it's up? That's because we have the ability to report it so quickly. That brings me to my next item that's engineered to provoke reactions: fear, anger, panic, and that tribal loyalty. Hey, I'm a member of this political party, and you're wrong. And the other side says, well, no, you're wrong. I'm a member of this party. And that's why critical thinking matters. Do you know the difference between the far left and the far right? Nothing. They act exactly the same. It's the people in the middle, the critical thinkers, that are going to matter. And honestly, I think that's what those teachers were trying to teach us way long ago. Back then, I thought AP English was about passing tests. Now I realize it was about pattern recognition. I was amazed when I left the school system and joined the military. The military had these tests called CLEP tests. And they're not just military tests, anybody can take CLEP tests. But the military let us take them for free. So I went down, signed up to take a CLEP test, and passed it. Passed it almost with a perfect grade. I was shocked. It was social science and history. I'd never really thought of myself as a social scientist. I keep peeping over at the screen to see what you guys are saying in the chat, but I can't really read it that quick. So I went back to the education center and took another CLEP test and another one, and I wound up CLEPing 24 semester hours of college credit. And everything that was on those tests, I learned in that AP English class and more. And some of it I learned in music class in elementary school, which is absolutely amazing. Miss Wilkie, she was our music teacher, but she taught us so much more. So much more. It was amazing how that the music class was used to work in things into the curriculum that just weren't being taught in other places. I kind of miss those days. But they taught me pattern recognition. They taught me how to recognize propaganda. They taught me to recognize emotional manipulation, and then recognizing human weakness, recognizing ourselves. And even at 16 years old, I didn't fully understand something, but in my late 50s, I finally do. Now, keep in mind, I had this educational experience in my teens. I went on to serve in military intelligence, where my job was to manipulate people. And I still didn't fully understand everything until I was in my mid to late 50s. So I was actually out there doing it and still didn't fully understand what I was doing. But maybe that's why these books matter. Old books, these old dusty books that I've been talking about. Not because they predicted the future, but because they understood people. And human beings haven't changed nearly as much as we think we have. This is Todd Edwards with TicBite NC. Y'all slow down once in a while. Read something old. I know it's hard to, in a soundbite society and in a 30-second reels clip world, it's hard to sit down and watch a podcast that's now going on 19 minutes. I know it's difficult to sit and watch it. It's too long. We've trained our brains to watch something that's at most 30 seconds, and we've learned to get the news from a 10-second soundbite. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a moment, grab one of these books that I was talking about, and read it. Don't get an online version. Don't get a books on tape version. Get one in print and paper and sit down and read it, because it's too easy to change an online book. They can edit that book immediately, and suddenly you're reading something different. Same thing with the books on tape. But if you've got one that's in book format, ink on pages, the only way you get rid of that's a book burning. We had plenty of those in the 40s. So go read some Orwell, 1984, and others. Read A Brave New World. Read Fahrenheit 451. Check these books out. Buy yourself a copy. And do me a favor. Follow me on TikTok. Let's see here. When I made this little link right here, I had 3,966 followers. I'm trying to get. Oh, that's actually a live link. That's a real link. Trying to get that up to 4,000 today. It'd be great if y'all could help me out. So, what do you think? Do you think do you think we're living in a 1984 world? In 1984, there was a view screen that sat in the house, in every house, and you couldn't turn it off. You could turn it down, but you couldn't turn it completely off. And there was very few places you could go in the house to get away from it. There were also view screens all over public that watched you everywhere you go. Do you think you're being watched everywhere you go now? If you don't, I can tell you this, you probably are. Interesting thing about today's world, you're on camera just about all day, every day. Just about all day, every day. So you think about it. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate a like or two here or there. Throw some more likes out there in the thing. I'm gonna take a minute to take a look at the chats. Thanks for being there and thanks for listening. I've just been rambling about Big Brother, and if you've read 1984, you know who Big Brother is. We're living in it. It was supposed to be a warning. It wasn't supposed to be a guide on how to do it, but it